What's up everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Jonah White. I'm an independent apocalyptic author. So today I'm going to be talking about, as part of my Journey to Publication series, how to create better villains. So before we get started, if you haven't already, feel free to like, subscribe, and share my channel. That way it helps support the channel as well as it lets me know that these are the type of videos that you enjoy. But without any further ado, let's get on with this video. Okay, so the first thing I'd like to talk about is obviously decide what role or how big of a role your villain plays in your story, because if it's a bigger role, you definitely want to dedicate more time into this villain. I would say just as much time as your protagonist or your main character, because if it's a shorter role, then maybe some of these steps don't really apply or you don't have to go too deep into them. So the second thing I want to talk about is make sure that your villain has actual goals and motivations. Like, obviously a goal could be like something like like your villain would like to rob a bank, or this one's pretty generic, but they like to take over the world, which is a pretty generic goal. But the thing is, if you're going to go with something like I'm going to take over the world, why are they going to do it? What is their motivation? If you're just going to go with like, well, because they're evil, well, then your villain is just going to be disposable and very forgettable and just be added with the other 3 million other villains that have that sort of motivation. So make sure you know what are your villains' goals and what is their motivation. But also remember this when it comes to your villains. They're doing what they're doing because most of the time it's not because they know what they're doing is bad and they're just like want to be evil just for the sake of it. Yeah, you can do that for a couple of your villains, but for the majority, don't go this way, because this is going to make your villain very generic and forgettable and just the mustache twirling tropes or cliches. So your villain is doing what they're doing because they believe they're on the right side of history, or they believe that they're the good guys by doing this. Now, you can make that some things that they know that they're doing leading up to reaching their goal is bad, but in the end, to them, the end just justifies the means, so they don't really care how they get to that goal. But they know that goal, they think it's the right thing to do, but they may have the wrong methods of getting there, or it may be good to them, but for the rest of the world, it's not the best thing for them. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is make your villain stronger, an actual threat to your main character, because this is going to help your main character become a better character, because they're going to start off as the underdogs and they're going to have to climb their way up to defeat your villain or antagonist. And this can apply to both a standalone book and a series. Because one thing you don't want is, because if the villain starts out weaker than the main character, then we can't take them seriously. Then they're not an actual threat. Even if you try to portray them out to be this big threat and they just don't accomplish anything, they don't really put any obstacles for your main character, and they're just weaker than your main character. So if you make them stronger, we can actually take them seriously. So make sure that you actually make your villain stronger than your main character. That way we can take them seriously as the readers. So another thing that you can do with your villains is actually give them a backstory. Now this applies to your villains that play a larger role in your stories, but even if they play a shorter role, you can try to drop hints of where this character has been previously, what led them to believe that what they're doing right now is right. Because remember, 99.99, I don't think anyone in the world is just born evil or born with evil things that they just carry over through life. People need to develop a philosophy, a consciousness, or kind of shape their mind to believe what they believe over time. So make sure that you're in your book, you kind of give us a little bit of hints or show us in flashbacks, or if you don't do flashbacks, just drop hints along the way through dialogue or just what's going on in the villain's head. How did they get to this point, and what makes them believe that what they're doing right now is right? Because villains are much better when we actually see their why they believe what they're doing is right, rather than them just being well, I just want to be evil just for the sake of it. Okay, then literally you're just making your villain just the devil at this point, and a lot of us don't want to see that in most of your stories. Okay, so one final thing that I'd like to talk about when it comes to creating better villains is this. Now this step applies a little bit more if your villain is more like a general of an army, or they have a group of minions or something like that. But make them somewhat of a representation of the enemy force. Like, allow us to see what this enemy force is like through your main villain. Now, if your main villain is ruthless and likes eliminating innocent people, we can take that they instill that into their minions or their followers, and we can assume that this enemy force is like that as well. So make sure that your villain represents the enemy faction, because they are like our gateway towards like learning more about your enemies, and that way they don't just come off as like faceless generic enemies and we don't really know much about them or anything like that. So take advantage of letting us see what your enemy force is like through your main villain. So that's going to conclude this video. If you guys liked it, feel free to let me know in the comments section below, or just leave a like and subscribe. And I'm going to continue on with these sort of writing tips videos in my Journey to Publication series. Right now we're in phase 2, because phase 1 I was talking about how to form the story and like craft like a plotting chart. Phase 2 is sort of like writing better characters, writing better Act 1, Chapter 1s or Act 2s, as well as like videos like this where I tell you how to write better main characters or better villains. So phase 3 is going to be, and it's going to start in a couple weeks, it's going to be talking about marketing and what to do leading up to your book's release. And that's going to include editing, proofreading, and how to create better book covers. And I'm going to use some of my personal experience as well. But without any further talking, I'll see you guys next time. Happy writing and good day.